Bobby Marks of ESPN has revealed another potential suitor for Zach LaVine, as this time it isn't a contender and a team that has definitely been swept under the rug as of late for getting Zach LaVine on their team. I'm your host, Joey Mercer. This is Bulls Digest, and before I get into it there today, I just want to say that about 95% of you that watch these videos are not subscribed, so if you're one of those people that watch these videos each and every single day, make sure to go down below, hit the subscribe button, turn on the bells for notifications, and you will get this content every day delivered to you. You won't have to search for it anymore. And yeah, as I've mentioned before, it's 7 days a week. There's no days off, and every time that there is big Chicago Bulls news, they're just keeping you up to date every single game post games. This is the place for you. And you don't have to look any further because you found the home for you to find everything you need to know on the Chicago Bulls right here. So without further ado, let's get right into it. First thing we're going to talk about today is the new suitor that is revealed. So it isn't somebody that we've even talked about. It isn't a team that has really come to the surface of being trades for anybody this year, as they've really struggled to start this season and struggled the past few years in that matter, since they moved somebody that we have on our team in Andre Drummond. And yes, that team is the Detroit Pistons, interesting enough. So multiple reports have suggested that the Bulls continue to look for a trade for LaVine. And when Bobby Marks told B. Geltz NBA, at B. Geltz NBA, and Sam Mitchell, the Pistons could be his landing spot. The quote being, "I wouldn't be surprised if Detroit dipped their toe into the Zach LaVine market." It's interesting to see there because Detroit is such a bad team right now. I mean, they've dropped, 15 or 16 games in a row. They've won 4 games in all of 2023, and they were one of the worst teams in sports right now, record-wise. And they do have a lot of young guys, but they haven't really had anything consistent as far as a leader goes, besides like a little bit of Bogdanovich. But it's not really something you want to write home about. It's nothing too great. The next thing I saw was a Sports Illustrated article about this, saying it's tough to envision a scenario where the Bulls make it through the NBA trade deadline with a core roster remotely similar to its current outlook. Chicago's off to a 7-14 start to the current season, and a number of the team's core players have been mentioned in numerous trade rumors of late, including guard Zach LaVine. The 28-year-old, who's been in Chicago since the 2017-18 season, appears to be on his way out. But unfortunately, a recent report stated that there's not a market for LaVine right now, which ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski reported just ahead of the weekend. And that's actually what we talked about in yesterday's video, saying that Woj came out saying there is no market right now for Zach LaVine, but could see that, you know, there was different things we saw, rumblings around the league. Maybe the Lakers are going to get him. Maybe it all depends on the value and what's happening. But obviously we just won the last 2 games without Zach LaVine in the lineup, which is definitely going to hurt his trade value, as that was the biggest question besides the contract, of course, being, is he a winning basketball player and how is he going to contribute to a contender? Well, now with the news of the Detroit Pistons being interested in him, he doesn't have to worry about contributing to a contender because, you know, they aren't a contender. They are nowhere near that. They aren't even anywhere near a playoff team. They're the worst team in the NBA right now, even worse than the Wizards with Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma, who have been absolutely abysmal to start, as they have the worst duo net rating, I believe I saw. It was like -31, so ouch there in Washington as well. But Detroit, of course, definitely a horrible team, and it's really hard to see. They have a lot of young guys coming up, but you need somebody that isn't just a young guy with lots of potential to put some asses in the seats. I mean, eventually, the fans, sorry, are just going to be like, I'm not coming to any games. We're not supporting this team. You can't just stay young forever. You eventually have to get somewhere with those young prospects, as opposed to losing them or not really developing them into the players that they can be. And that seems to be what's happening in Detroit right now, which is quite sad overall. Next thing I saw was there is one team that Wojnarowski's co-worker at ESPN, Bobby Marks, can envision emerging in the trade market for LaVine. The Pistons. Detroit is, 2-17? I would not be surprised if Detroit dipped their toe into the Zach LaVine market and see if we can get a guy who's a former All-Star who we couldn't get in free agency and it doesn't cost as much, that they go out and do something like that. that would be kind of a team I'd just keep an eye on, Mark said on SiriusXM NBA Radio. So interesting enough to see there as well that Bobby Marks is saying just because they're so bad, maybe they need to get somebody, and they are in desperation mode right now. Similar to the Bulls trying to move players right now, the Pistons are trying to get whoever they can get so that somebody they can put on, posters other than just guys with potential, somebody that has some former success as an all-star like Zach LaVine that could sell tickets to people who are a little bit more of a fair weather NBA fan and don't follow it religiously enough to know that, oh, this guy has a lot of potential, and just want to simply go to the games or watch a game and see someone put up points or put up stats. I mean, Cade's done a great job so far this season, but the amount of help that he has had on the offensive end hasn't been a lot, as Asor Thompson is really just a defensive player at this point in his career, really can't shoot. Killian Hayes has been nothing short of awful realistically overall. He's really a mediocre basketball player in the NBA. And then a lot of the other guys are just specialists. Jalen Duren, a guy that can only finish around the rim. Great rebounder and seems to be getting some defensive things going, but has had some injury woes so far this season and hasn't stayed consistent in that factor. Isaiah Stewart, or Beef Stew as they call him, a little bit short, hot-tempered, and does have a solid wingspan, but what position is he playing? Is he playing PF or center? He isn't that tall. I believe he's 6'8". So a lot of questions there on the team as they've had some players come in, perform very well, and then they've had other guys not performing so great. And then they also have James Wiseman and Marvin Bagley, who, once again, they're kind of what-ifs from both of their drafts, where they're kind of like, they didn't not go anywhere near the potential, up to this point at least, of reaching where scouts thought they were going to be. So a lot of questions there. So you'd like to get a guy like Zach LaVine that at the end of the day, even if he isn't playing defense, the Pistons have enough of those guys. They need another scorer to help Cade. And even though they are 2-17, a good fit for them would be Zach LaVine, as he doesn't play much of any defense at all, but is a very good scorer and offensive player overall, and he can shoot the ball well to space the floor for them too. And what we'd be able to get back for them is interesting, because if we were looking to go to a rebuild, or even just seeing how the rest of the roster goes with LaVine not on it, it makes a lot of sense for us to get some of the younger guys on the Pistons that aren't going to demand a lot of playing time right away, as they are just dipping their foot in the water and getting their feet wet, so to speak, with the NBA lifestyle as a whole. So it's interesting to see there that we could acquire some solid prospects at a lower cost, because Detroit has so many of them and they're pretty expendable if you are the Pistons right now. The next topic that we're going to talk about today is why it makes sense. So I've kind of talked about how it makes sense to get LaVine in there because he is a former All-Star, and it would kind of maybe sell more tickets, get more interest for the team, maybe a bit more of a fan base based on that. But there are a few more things to look into when it comes to that. And the first thing is this part of the article I read, saying it's tough to argue with this on a surface level, considering Detroit has dropped 17 games in a row to start the 2023-24 season, and they're currently 2-18 with the worst record in the league, so it makes sense for them to be active at the trade deadline. A lot of people think that teams that are that bad are just going to ride things out, gather draft picks, whatever it may be. No, I mean, you might be really bad, but you can still get players at the trade deadline that could help you in the next season or a couple seasons down the road. You don't just have to maintain and be bad and just acquire draft picks. You can also build from other teams that might not need players or are shopping them. You can kind of casually bring yourself to being a playoff contending team, and you don't just have to build out of the draft. I mean, by all means, if you have that many young guys on the team, just like I feel like the Thunder should have already done already, make a trade for a bigger name. Why not? You know, you're going to get more fans, you're going to get more butts in the seat, and you might even make the playoffs or get close to that or just become a really fun team. I'm not saying the Thunder are bad. They've been, a solid team so far the year. Lately, they've been a little bit more down, but to start the year, they were absolutely, great, coming out firing on all cylinders. Chet looked really solid. But at the end of the day, you can't just have everybody young on your team, and you need to have that leader there for sure. And we're not going to get into more about the Thunder in that situation. But the Pistons do need that guy right now. They need a leader. They really need... I'm not saying that Zach LaVine's a leader, but it could be a stepping stone to them getting somebody else. and just kind of relieving some of the pressure off of Cade with another scorer out there, because Killian Hayes just is not getting it done, obviously. The next thing and the last thing that I want to talk about that I saw in the article is the big question is how that move would pan out with LaVine. While he still has 2 more years and a potential player option after the season, on his current contract, LaVine doesn't have a no-trade clause in his deal. But as we've seen in the past, players not having the power to veto trades hasn't stopped things from getting a bit uncomfortable. James Harden and the 76ers Clippers eventual trade was proof of that in numerous ways. And it's true, players can become very disgruntled when they get moved or just with the organization as a whole. I mean, we've seen LaVine walk off the court now, make some jokes to OG Anunoby, and he hasn't been the most professional guy as of late, which you really haven't seen Zach bring much things to the surface and out to the media, and he kind of has done a little bit of that. In interviews, he's denied things, but there's just a good bit of evidence at this point showing that he hasn't been the most loyal to the organization as far as just keeping his mouth shut, just going along with his business. When you look at a guy that leaves, doesn't talk to anybody, doesn't really carry out his job, frustrates the front office, and then in all of this happening with trade rumors and trade reports looming everywhere, that he just goes out and makes a joke to OG Anunoby at the complete wrong time, which was my whole point with that when I made that video after they played them in the in-season tourney game. So, interesting to see there. We'll see what happens with Zach LaVine in the coming days. Will he be moved to Detroit, or is there going to be another team come out as a potential suitor? I don't believe that the market is no one, and I believe that it's expanding by the day because of the report saying it's no one, so other teams think they can get in there and maybe snag him at a lower price. We'll keep you up to date on everything you need to know with Zach LaVine and the Chicago Bulls as a whole, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Make sure to go down below, like and comment on the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on that bell for notifications. You won't have to search for this anymore, and we do it 7 days a week, so why not? And this is your host, Joey Mercer, signing off.